Welcome to the Stitched By podcast, the podcast where we speak with crafters, creators, designers, and pattern makers in the sewing, knitting, and crochet communities about the topics that matter most to them and to you. I'm your host, Auri at Stitched by Auri, and today I'll be speaking with three guests: Jaj at Jaj.co, May at May.knits, and Shay at The Bookish Alchemist. Learn more about them in the description. The basis of our conversation today is, where do you think the line should be drawn when it comes to referencing in fashion or pattern making, and at what point does it become copying? Welcome, Jaj, May, and Shay to the Stitched By podcast. Thank you all for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Hi.
Good to be here.
Yeah, of course. So you're all designers and or pattern makers here. So how would you describe creative inspiration?
Like philosophically?
Sure. Yeah.
I hope I'm answering this the way you were asking, but I think for me, inspiration is kind of like this urge to create something based on some sort of like stimuli or some sort of like input, and then it translates into like this need to create or this need to like make it tangible. Is that where you're kind of getting into?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I would add on to that. Like, I love how you put that. For me, I often find myself designing or creating things that I don't necessarily have access to. And even when I am creating, it always kind of embodies certain things that are very me. And that I always gravitate towards the color red. So that shows up in a lot of things that I create, or certain motifs. I am often drawn to florals. So while I don't have a pattern right now that has that, there are so many thoughts and ideas that have that spinning for me. But yeah, for me, it's creating things that I myself want that I don't see available.
I'd agree with that too. I think a lot of my creative process and the inspiration that I get is from like a lot of like vintage fashion. And originally when I got into pattern making, it was because I would see all of these images of vintage outfits, but the way that fibers age over time, you really don't have access to clothing from the 1940s, for example.
Yeah.
A lot of it is either degraded or it's in someone's like keepsake closet, as it should be. And it's just hard to get your hands on it. So oftentimes when I'm looking for inspiration, it is also for something that is kind of out of reach for me. So I think Shay, like, I really agree with what you said. But yeah, I also think it is like an excitement of like, oh, I'm so excited to like get my hands on this thing that I can just envision myself living with and having around.
Okay. Yeah, I love all of your answers. I think that, it then kind of begs the question, how do you as designers ensure that you yourself are not copying? Like, which mediums do you go through to find your inspiration and to make sure, hey, I'm not ripping off someone's design, I'm not copying them, this is a unique to me piece?
I am often inspired by fantasy books, movies, TV. And so I'll start off with an idea often of a style that inspires me. For a coat that I just worked on, I was very inspired by Howl in Howl's Moving Castle, with other elements from like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. So I do start off with a very vague idea of what I want to create. But as I go, I always find that I make changes along the way. And these changes just somehow never align with the original look. I always find something in myself where I'm like, oh, I think I'd like this a little bit more. And it does look very different from that original design. And even my ideation phase is still different than the inspiration, because I'm drawing inspiration from multiple things at once. I don't for myself feel like I can just look at something and then try to recreate it. that's not necessarily an inspired design. That's just a recreated design, which is fair, especially if you're trying to recreate something from, like May said, the 1940s and 50s, or from fantasy. There is a very valid aspect of recreating, because at a certain point you don't have access to the original pattern. So I do think that there will be differences. But if I'm finding inspiration from multiple pieces, then there's a lot of different things that go into it. But then also there's things for myself that I like that are being added as well to make it very original at a certain point.
I liked what you said. Yeah, recreated versus designed. I think that's what you said. Yeah, that's a really, I like that.
I also think, because I think, Shay, when you're saying, it kind of reminded me of this, like, because you're saying like the ideation process is different from the actual doing process and like the final results. It reminds me of this idea where like ideas sometimes just like takes the life of its own, and you're like, oh, I'm the execution, I'm the person executing it, but the idea itself kind of like got a life and then became something that it really wanted to be, which I love. I think like when that happens, you're like, oh wow, this is like a living, breathing thing that got to be its own form. And I think, or for your question too, like, where do we make sure we're not copying versus like where we're inspiring? I think for me, I have to be very honest with myself and ask, like, did I add anything to it? Like, is this just a recreation of something without any elements of me? So then it's just a recreation, which is fine. Then it's a practice, right? Like I'm recreating to learn, or I'm recreating to say, like, can I make this? Is this possible? But I feel like with the artist integrity, it's hard to put your name on it, to say like, oh, I actually created that, right? Because you know there was nothing about me that was actually in that piece. So I think that's kind of where I draw the line, by just like having to be very honest, and then like ask myself, like, did I actually add anything to it, or is it just like a practice for myself?
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I haven't really thought about it. I mean, as a designer myself, I do try to say like, where am I drawing my inspiration, and what are my interests, and what are the style that I'm going after when it comes to like making designs that I want to wear or that I want to use in a pattern. And so I think, many of us probably naturally add our own essence into our designs. But, if you're recreating something, I guess you have to ask yourself, are you adding something? And I guess I wonder what that looks like, because we can say like, oh, well, yeah, I copied that design, but I added this thing here. That's me. But like, how much of you do you need to add, I guess, for it to not count as copying? Like at what point is it still like, is it yours, or is it, more reference than not?
And it's so true too, because as you're talking, I realized like, I guess there's some things you can't even add on that much. Like say, for example, you're making a suit, right? Like you're making like a suit, and it's like classically technical in so many ways, where like, yes, you can make the shoulder pad bigger. Yes, you can make the weight. You can do all of those, but a really good suit itself is just like the basics. So then in that case, I don't know. That's an interesting, like, gray. I don't even think it's gray, but I think like that's probably something that sparked the debate in the first place. Right. Is like how much of remake is remake, and how much of it is like how new does that have to be each time? Like how different does it have to be each time? Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting with your point about the suit, because then that kind of makes me think, okay, what are the more basic designs out there where like you can say, oh, I designed this t-shirt, and it has like the typical t-shirt shaping, but technically it's still your design, right? Because you figured out how you wanted to do it. It's with your sizing. If you make it into a pattern, it's with your size chart. So technically that's designed by you, but I guess that's kind of different. Right.
Yeah.
So like, how do we view like fully designed, unique versus, okay, well, this is kind of like a basic, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, something that I always think about for Basics specifically is how every store that you walk into is going to have basic tees, basic pants, basic sweaters, just very, very basic construction. A raglan is a raglan. You have certain patterns that realistically are going to translate across the board. And there's only so much you can do when you are creating your own. And creating your own is completely valid. Like you are bringing your own work and preferences, I think, too, when you are creating a basic. But if you start to get into that zone of feeling like somebody may have come and copied you, which is always like a possibility. There are people who go out there and just take your work. That's not to say that doesn't happen. But when you're in a realm where you are creating basics, you have to be very honest with yourself, as Josh has already said, that there's only so much you can do at a certain point with basics. So yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. Anything that you want to add, May?
I think it's tough because, it's really easy to say if you made a statement piece that has like a really unique motif or color work, and if somebody were to copy that, it would be very easy to say, yeah, this person copied my work. It would be really obvious. But with basics, it becomes a little bit more gray. And these classic silhouettes, these really simple garment constructions have been redesigned over and over for a reason, because they're really great to wear. People like to make them. And when you're making something and you're spending that many hours, you want to make something that you're going to be able to wear for years to come over and over. Mm-hmm. But can someone copy a raglan design? You know what I mean? It depends. I do think that everyone brings their own personality to their basics. And I don't personally see a problem with continuing to redesign basics. If the market is flooded and what you want to do is make money off of your patterns, and you design another top-down raglan and it doesn't get as popular as you want, maybe that just means that right now there are too many top-down raglan sweaters on the market. But that being said, I don't think that it should stop anyone if that's something that's inspiring you and you really want to make your version of this like classic basic. Yeah, I think they get redesigned for a reason, and there's nothing wrong with adding another one, but I'm not sure. It's tough to say where the line is with copying there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I feel like the reason, I wanted to have this conversation is because I'm on Instagram and, other social media platforms, and I see this conversation happen at least once a year. I've been in the crafting space for, I think, like 7-8 years now. And I see this happen all the time where somebody's like, I've never seen somebody directly name, this person copied me. It's always like, this other brand released this, sorry, the bark kind of threw me off.
Pattern?
Yeah, this other brand released this pattern, but I just released a pattern just like that too. They're copying me. It's never like that direct. It's more so like, if you're in the space and you're familiar with the different brands and what's going on, or you're familiar with a particular creator, they'll kind of like jab at it a little bit. They'll be like, I was copied, and I won't say who. It's always like this like really dramatic
side eye.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to name them because like that's not who I am. But and I'm like, you're still doing the thing that you're saying you're not doing, but you're just not naming, which I think ultimately causes more drama, because then it requires people to kind of infer like, oh, I saw this person with something like this, so I think maybe they're talking about them. And then I think it just becomes like this really big thing of like, I was copied. And then I look at their designs and I'm like, these are track pants. Or this is a very basic cardigan. Or like, this is a shawl. And I'm always a little bit bewildered because I'm looking at these designs and they just read as basic to me. I'm like, people 50 years ago made something exactly like this, or like this was popular in the 70s, So I'm like, where This is a big word I'm about to use, but like, I wonder where people get the audacity to be like, I've been copied, when they themselves are using a trending idea or
Yeah.
design. Yeah.
I feel like
Do you think it happens in... I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, we're doing this again. Do you think it happens a lot in the craft space? Is that like a very common thing? Because I was gonna say, like, I feel like this happens so often in the design space, like the fashion industry. I guess they're like, oh, it happens. So I wonder if it's more sensitive in the crafting space because it's a different community or a different like protectiveness of your work.
I think for the knitting space at this current time, because the handmade knitting is more small scale with less room to actually be put into a more corporate area where it is commercialized. There is a little bit more sensitivity around it and not picking a fight, but calling somebody out indirectly, which in my opinion, I do think there's a proper way to call somebody out. Contact them first, say, hey, I notice similarities. If they don't want to have a conversation and you have tried everything you can to start that, then talk about it. And if you are going to talk about it, I mean, as long as you're being respectful, I do think that names should be named. I mean, stand 10 toes behind it. Like, you want to start a dialogue. You already went to that person behind the scenes. But back to, like, I do think if people in the knitting community are more sensitive, because there are a lot of creators and designers who are trying to profit off of their designs, which good for them. That's great. But they feel like it's a loss of revenue. And they're the one-person show. They don't have a team or other resources available to them. But I do think that there needs to be a level of realism and self-reflection of, there are trends going on and you made something that is trending at the moment, or is a basic staple piece.
Like, almost doesn't matter if it's simple or basic, but you came for my work, like you came for my job type of like feeling, right? I guess. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess then that leads me to ask, why do we think people get upset when they feel that they've been copied? Of course, no one wants to be copied, of course, but if you're making a trending design or if you're doing something that's like leaning basic, where do we think that that's stemming from? Do we think it's stemming from like an emotional place, a monetary place, if this person put out something similar to mine, maybe people won't buy my thing versus their thing? What do we think about that?
I feel like we just want to feel special. You know, like, we just want to feel special, not in like, I have to be special, but I think everyone do have this like need to be like, I'm a unique person. I have my creations are a part of me that I identify with, that I work so hard on. It is really special and important to me. So therefore it should be important and special to everyone else. And I feel like there must be a feeling of like, I feel so dismissed by someone taking something from me without even like acknowledging me, right? Or acknowledging the similarities or acknowledging something so obvious. Maybe that's what the feeling is. Like, I feel so dismissed and so disrespected. Yeah. I think I feel like I would feel that way, but but I'm also like, well, I guess that's the business.
Right. Yeah, maybe that means like there is an element within, fashion, pattern making, designing, where it's like there has to be an element of relinquishing control, I guess. And not even just in relinquishing control with someone might copy me, but also just in terms of will people even want to buy from you? You know, you might spend 6 months, a year working on a design and people seem excited about it. And then you put it out there and like people don't buy from you. And like this happens a lot in the space where
Right.
someone has put their heart and soul into putting out a pattern that they think people want in the community, you know, and then crickets on release day. You know, I've heard this
Yeah.
from many pattern makers. Um, I think that a big part of it as well, in terms of just like relinquishing control, is also being patient. Um, and I think maybe we could have a little bit more of that going going around too. Patience.
Well, to add on to what you were saying, along with patience, think about spaces outside of like knitting and design, fashion. There are artists out there, musicians, actors who are building their work base for years before they really pop off and become successful. So I think that we kind of go back to that honesty and self-reflection, where you may very well be putting out pieces that are fantastic, but you do also have to perhaps build your name up. How are you showing up in your community? Are you building up the other people around you? I don't think that you can just like show up in a space and put something out there and expect lightning right away. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of other things that go into it besides just your design. And something that I have heard May talk about, I think recently, was about how there are other things that you need to focus on as well. If, I don't know, May, you want to talk about it, like with the pattern making and showing up in a actual like good pattern.
Yeah, I think it's really an emotional experience to run a one person show where you're doing everything. You're marketing, you're designing your pattern template, you're doing all the math, you're making all the samples, you're trying out different yarns and making the swatches. It takes a really long time and a lot of effort to build a pattern, even if it is something that is relatively basic. So after all of that effort, if you get to the finish line and it is crickets or someone releases something really similar around the same time as you, I think it's really easy to have an emotional response. And I think it's a really great point that it does take time to build your personal brand, you could call it, or your knitwear brand, whatever you want to call it. It takes time to build community and to build a following of people who love your work. And I think part of that is not just about the design, because pattern making is a separate skill from design. So if you build quality patterns that people find easy to read, easy to digest, fun to make, without any of like the strings attached that they don't like, and there are so many different ways that you can write patterns. I think eventually people will notice, and the right people will find your work. But I think the answer to the disappointment you might feel if your pattern isn't an instant hit is to just try to find satisfaction within yourself that you put out the best pattern that you could. And even if somebody does release something similar, as long as you are happy with the work that you did, I think that that goes a long way into being able to like take a step back, think about like all of the details. Like, is this really copying? Is this just a moment of parallel thought? Like, how did this come to be? And am I happy with my own work? I think something that people don't talk a lot about is the support that you need as a pattern designer. I don't think, I mean, maybe if you're really lucky, but I don't think most pattern designers and publishers make a lot of money for the first few years, even. So if you don't have a decent paying job outside, or if you're not, living very like poorly, or, like depending on someone else for your everyday needs, I think it is really hard to put full-time hours into being a pattern designer for at least the first few years until you can build up your business. Obviously, some people are really lucky, but I think it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think it also, like, as you were talking, it was just reminding me of this. Like, I feel like none of us are saying you should get used to it. Like, don't complain. Like, it's obviously really annoying, and everyone who's felt it is like, oh, it's so annoying. But it just reminded me of, I guess we're in a place where, unfortunately, that is the environment, right? Like, unfortunately, copying happens, and it is so unfair. It is so annoying, and we want to call out the bad players, but I almost don't see there will ever be a case where like that's eliminated, we're all good. So then the challenge then for all artists and makers and people who are like doing this creative endeavor, the challenge now is how do I make it to have things that people can't copy? So it's like it almost, I feel like philosophically aligns with the AI conversation. Is like, okay, well, AI can do so many things now. Well, what can I do that AI can't replicate? Like, what can I do in my design that is uniquely me, and a copy would just be a copy? So I feel like it kind of pushes the people who are really serious about this into a higher place to be like, I'm doing this. I'm doing this, and I'm dedicated, and I'm gonna like, there's something in here. Good luck copying, like it'll still be a copy. I think that's kind of what I also appreciate is like, yes, it's really frustrating, but it does push people to kind of elevate a little bit more in their craft and in their design.
Yes.
Yeah, because a copy looks just like a copy a lot of times. It feels very empty. It feels soulless. Like Zara looks like Zara, like it from a mile away. So, so I think maybe that's like the silver lining in this situation.
I think it's really normal to have an emotional response when you see something that looks really similar to your work. I think that's like the most normal thing. And of course it hurts. But I do think if it's something that you want to do, unfortunately, this is where we're at with social media and with late stage capitalism, where a lot of copying is going to happen. Which is why my only take is that you just have to buckle up for the ride. I don't know. It's like if you're doing something well, or if you're doing something trendy that people really like there's a reason why people make trendy things. We like it. Lots of people like it. So of course you want to make a trendy pattern with a trendy silhouette. It sucks if you put all of that work into making something that someone else is making, but you just have to, if this is something you feel really passionate about, just keep going.
True.
There's something similar that happens in like the book space where people they release their work, they publish their book, and then there are other people who can come behind them and create fan fiction. Some authors embrace it because this is like a testament to the work that they've already put out there. And also all of these fan fiction writers are never claiming the work as their own. So they are still doing it in a respectful way, which is another thing I think we can talk about is what's a respectful way to take inspiration from somebody's work and then use that. Because at least for myself, every pattern that I choose to make, that is not my own, is going to have something in it that I want to learn, typically. Whether it's a stitch technique or a way of construction that I haven't done before, or they have different elements that I really am interested in incorporating into my own work and I haven't done it before, so I want to learn how to do it. But yeah, I think that it's interesting because I take inspiration from the people around me and the work that they do. And I don't think that I've ever created something that could be said is like a copy, but it has very clear elements of inspiration. But again, those ones are basics, like a cross stitch or like a basic cable is being incorporated into a pattern. So I think that May has had somebody reach out. You've had somebody reach out to you before, right? About your design?
I have. So a while back, I had a few people reach out to me about another person in our community that made a design that looked very similar to something else that I had made. And I was really upset about it because it was somebody that I knew and we didn't have the best relationship. And so multiple people were reaching out saying, hey, are you guys friends again? Are you hanging out with this person again? Are you working together? Because this is clearly your work. That's so cool. That's great. You guys are friends again. And no, we definitely weren't friends again. I got really upset about it because also they were giving the pattern out for free.
Name her. I'm kidding.
It's so not worth it. It's so not worth it. But I was really upset for a few days. I was in my group chat being like, do I hire an Etsy witch? What do I do? Do I call them out? Like, what do we do? And my friends were like, let me know. I know some witches. We can figure this out. And I sat on it for a couple of days and I decided that the best course of action was to just ignore it. Because first of all, I don't think that it was such a direct copy that I could say that it was publicly, because part of it was also that I knew this person so personally that I knew that they were doing it to attack me. But I also knew that they were doing it to get my attention. So I just decided to walk away and not give them that satisfaction. But it did hurt a lot. And it was really brutal because it was a pattern that I had been developing over the course of 2 years. Oh, wow. And then they kind of borrowed some major elements from it and turned it into something. But overall, when it comes to like inspiration and copying, if somebody were to borrow something from like my jelly top or like to tag me and say, I was inspired by May's jelly top, like I love the stitch texture or whatever, I have had that happen before too, and I love it. Like I love to inspire other people's work. If they're publishing a pattern that is a direct copy, of course, it's more upsetting, but I do think that art generally informs art, and people have been finding inspiration in other people's works from the beginning of making art. But yeah, it is tough. It was a tough experience to go through that.
Something I think that you said, which was really interesting, was that you took a few days before you decided on your course of action. And I think that if you had chosen to respond and call somebody out, that's totally valid as well. But I do love, because that's like something that I would hope that I would be able to do in that moment too, is take a few days to gather my thoughts, feel my emotions, and then decide what to do, because I don't particularly like reacting in emotion. I feel like my thoughts are, of course, very convoluted. I may say some things that are a bit stronger than I would intend afterwards. But yeah, I think that was like, I'm sure that like was really hard to do, was to wait and sit with that emotion.
I think it's important. That's how I like to deal with a lot of things now, because like in my early 20s, I definitely was a lot more hot-headed, and I would just dive in and just say what I was thinking. And I got myself into a lot of situations that maybe weren't the best. But I do think it's really normal to have feelings like this. Like, of course, I wanted to react and DM them and say, hey, whatever, like let them know what I was thinking. But I decided it was best to just text the group chat, complain a bunch, and then think about it. Because what are the long-term effects of calling this person out? And what evidence do I have to say that they actually did copy me? I don't really have much. My personal relationship, I'm sure. It was pretty similar. And multiple people were in my DMs saying, hey, I think this is your design. But at the end of the day, there wasn't really anything concrete that I could stand on to say, hey, this person copied my work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those things where like, it doesn't feel completely like kosher, right? It's like, I can't really put my finger on it, but my intuition is kind of telling me something is not really right about this.
Well, there are more details that I can't share because I think it would become very obvious what it was, and I'd rather not. but it was pretty obvious that that was what was going on.
Yeah.
And I also think like, because earlier we were talking about, is it emotional? Because I think there's also this emotion of, this is a disappointment in other people for not having the integrity that artists are supposed to have, right? Because you're like, well, you're supposed to be honest. Like if you're doing art, if you're doing creatives, like you're supposed to be honest and have integrity. But then this is the opposite of all of that. And I think there's like a lot of disappointment and resentment in that as well.
Yeah. I think then, it makes me think of a couple of different things, like within your own community that you're operating in, that you're designing in, making patterns in. How many of us are actually doing research to see, is there a design like this already? Am I adding anything to the community? Like I feel like one of the big points of designing is, what are you providing that doesn't already exist? What change are you making? What are you bringing that people could actually benefit from? And I don't know that many designers are really asking themselves that question anymore. Like, what am I providing to the space that is different or that people would want to engage with? And I think that maybe if people start to add that element into their process, that might kind of help maybe prevent this from happening so often. Like, are there designs like this already? Are other people potentially going to do this because this is trending? Is this something that I need to do? Or can I think a little bit longer on this design and figure out where my essence comes into it and makes it different? And then also the other thing that I think about is, where are you drawing your inspiration from? Are you drawing it from the actual community that you're in? Because is that not just like a feedback loop of everybody kind of doing the same thing, having the same conversations? Where else are you grabbing inspiration from? Because if it's just from the space that you're in, why? Why aren't you looking outside of the space that you're in? Oftentimes people will look for inspiration in other spaces and then bring that to their space. And then people see it and they're like, oh my God, this is so new and different and exciting. And it's like, it's new and different for this industry or this community, but it's not new in the world, And I've noticed, when I see a unique design or a unique pattern, I'm like, that is so cool. And it makes me wonder, like, I really would love to know, where did they get their inspiration from? Because it doesn't seem like they grabbed their inspiration from the space. Like, it seems like they did something else. So yeah, I wonder if that would kind of help to solve this issue at least a little bit.
I do think that so when we're talking about copying, I think that there's kind of a divide that we've been talking about. Basics, which you have to at a certain point accept a certain level of realistic self-reflection. But then the discussion is a little bit more serious once you get into more complex motifs and edges, cuffs, hems, that sort of thing, where you may have more intricate aspects of your design, where it's just more detailed. So I like what you said about looking for a gap in where you're looking for something for yourself. Maybe you're not finding it and you want to fill that space. And what might not be popular in the space that you're currently in could be popular somewhere else. I mean, that even occurs culturally.
Right.
So I had that happen for my coat, which is still in development. I'm realistically only going to release one pattern this year. I'm not going to survive off of any patterns I put out for a while yet. But I saw a lack of what I was looking for and what I wanted to wear. And I have a very eclectic style, I would say. I mean, I love my basics down bad, but I do like things that are very different than trendy. So when I created my pattern that is the coat that I'm working on, I was also very realistic with myself that this is not going to appeal to everybody. So something that I've been working on because I'm a designer, I'm not a pattern maker. I don't have the tools at my disposal quite yet of creating a commercial ready pattern. I have a friend who is very good at that, and I've hired her to help me with the actual pattern making. But something that's very important to me is being able to personalize things, both for measurements, fitting, but also for design aspects of being able to switch in things in certain areas that you might like more or for different lengths. So I think personalization also is something that for me that is hopefully going to set my work apart. And not in a my work is better than anybody else's. Absolutely not. I take inspiration from so many people around me. And even that personalization aspect is something that I saw another designer doing. And I went, oh my God, that is absolutely amazing. Why don't more pattern makers and designers do that? But yeah.
Excellent points.
Personally, when I'm designing something, if it's something that is more of a basic, I will kind of look around to see what is out there to make sure that I'm not following the same gauge or the same stitch pattern or making something very, very similar to someone that has published a pattern in the recent past. But I would say, honestly, I try to just make what I feel inspired by in the moment and try not to look too much about like what other people are making. Because I do think that the best pattern that I would make would be something that I feel inspired by, whether that is something that's more basic or more of a statement piece. Um, so yeah, at first, when I first started designing, I did do a ton of research to make sure there's nothing that looks exactly the same. But after working in yarn shops for years and being part of the community, I've kind of come to the realization that even if it's with a different gauge and a different needle, as long as you're not looking at someone's pattern, looking at someone's work, and you are putting your own effort into making your cardigan or your whatever pattern you're making look the way that you want it to, I honestly think it's fair game. I wouldn't go out of my way to be like, I want to make exactly this person's pattern in a different gauge and say that. But as long as it's from like your own inspiration and you're like, I really want a sweater that looks like this, and you're kind of ideating on your own, I think that it's totally fine. Um, I think that it does get sticky, but as long as you're doing the work yourself and putting the effort in, I honestly think like it is what it is. Like there's going to be a certain amount of parallel thought in fashion, and most of the time like there is referencing in fashion. There's always referencing to past silhouettes, current runways, different designs that people are making, new silhouettes, but there are only so many ways to make a top, for example. So yeah, you're going to see different elements that other people have put into their patterns before in your patterns. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just kind of part of it. I just try to focus personally on making something that I want to make.
I wonder, like, thinking about the fact that we are in late stage capitalism, if that, I definitely think that that's playing a huge role in how people are approaching design and fashion and pattern making. We see it in so many industries, even in the movie industry. Like, I love movies. I studied film in school, and I I'm getting a little bored of like Batman number 10 is here, and I'm just like, why isn't there anything new happening? Why are we so focused on the same IP, the same designs, the same trending stuff? Like, why can't we break out of that and expand past it and try something new? And the answer is late stage capitalism. Nobody wants to try something different because it might not work and people might not buy into it. And you might have wasted, with movies, they can take years to make. So you might have wasted years making this movie and nobody goes to watch it. Or, you might spend months making this pattern and nobody buys it. And I think like when it comes to art in general and like, I guess I wonder what you guys' thoughts are on that, like with pattern making. I view it as an art form. I view it as a way to challenge myself, to try something hard, to see, can I get this technically correct? This design I see in my head, can I make it a reality? And so it's a challenge for myself to see if I can like bring this thought, this art form, this creativity forward. But that might not be the motivation for everybody. Somebody's motivation could be, this pattern is trending in the fashion space. I want to make it before anybody else does. I want to put it out there because I want to make a ton of money. Like, I guess I wonder, like, where is the creativity? Where is the art form? Where is the, I guess, what is your motivation to putting out patterns and to creating designs? And maybe that's very like mentally foo-foo of me to like think on this like deeper level, but I'm just like, if more people ask themselves, why do I want to do this? That I think could also kind of help with the trouble with, oh, somebody might copy me, or I was copied, or obviously I think that we have to just accept that copying is like, you guys mentioned this before, copying is just part of the space. So there is an element of that where you just have to say like, this is part of it, and I have to accept that to a degree. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I do think it's that deep. Like, it is that deep. I think I love that you brought up this, like, movies all look the same, scripts all look the same, because I've been complaining about that for so long. And I think I love this topic. I think what we have now is the decision makers on what goes into the culture are different from the people who are actually capable of making things. So like the decision makers are the finance people, the investors, and the people who are like, oh, I lead a studio and I need to make sure that this film has a strong ROI. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to take risks because like their job's on the line, right? So I think everyone's kind of making decisions out of fear. But what I know to be true, just based on my observations, that people crave art. I think we're in especially, I think in the US, everything has been like kind of narrowed down to like this plain, homogenous sameness. Like shopping feels the same. Mm-hmm. Like everything, every season is the same. And it's the same and gets worse every time, right? The quality gets worse, the material gets worse, the experience gets worse. So I feel like I think people do crave art. And I think, and it's actually a result of a lot of these decision makers like taking taking no risks, actually, making safe decisions. I feel like that's kind of like a product, because I think people are really wanting like, okay, I've seen the same shirt over and over again since 2013 or since 2009. Mm-hmm. And then we're still doing it. And then I want to see something new. I want to see something different.
Do you think that's true
and
for
I feel that.
Our creative communities as well? Like, do you think that people are also craving something different and unique? I mean, I am. I mean, obviously, basics do play a really huge role in just everyday wear. Like, if we just talk about it from a functionality perspective, basics are important. We cannot deny that. But also, basics, how many more do we need? Like, we have so many. And not to say that you yourself can't put your stamp on this basic and like put out a pattern. Maybe you have sizing that like the rest of the community hasn't seen, and you do need to bring that forward. So like, I think that there really is a space for everybody. And I think we've kind of gotten into this space where it's me against them. It's me against you. It's not, hey, all of us are in this together. We're all on this floating rock, just, doing whatever. Like, yes, not every single designer needs to release the same kind of t-shirt pattern, but I think that people are also craving something else. Of course, you can make your basics, but yeah, where's the more of it, I guess.
I also think that there's two routes to a designer too. I mean, probably more, but the two main routes, one is like for the art of it, and the other one is for the commercialism of it. Like, they are here for the capitalist game, which is, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Like the society is built for that kind of like it's a system for that.
Right.
So I feel like there's nothing wrong. So like we were saying, or I'm gonna make a pattern of something basic and then just pump it out and make a lot of money. I think that is also something valid when it comes to a business decision, but you can't back it up with saying like, oh, I'm making art, because it's a very different purpose.
Right.
There's an artist out there in the knitting community right now who pushes out basics. That is what she does. But we don't hear them talking about people taking and copying her work. Mm-hmm. She knows what she does. She does it overall pretty well. And that's it. She's not engaging with, oh, you copied me or anything like that. Like, you have to know what you're doing at that point. Mm-hmm. But when you get to the smaller creators, I do think that they're often find themselves to be in a survival bubble where they're just trying to survive and put out work that can make them money. Mm. But I do think that there are people out there who are trying to do that too quickly. You most likely cannot sustain yourself right away with a few basic patterns. Mm-mm. I think you need to be realistic and have either another part-time job or full-time job if that's where you're at as well. There is something to be said for following your dreams, but you have to be responsible when you're doing that as well. And that is just to like finish up really quickly. Like, I do think it is a symptom of our society and culture where artists are not supported. Mm-hmm. Honestly, like, there's not any resources in this country, and other ones as well, but especially in the US, there are very limited resources for artists, and actually like programs that were available have been cut in recent times. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very hard to put art out there, but I do think that it creates a chamber for people who are really passionate to continue doing it. And I do think we're going to see a lot of amazing things coming. Mm-hmm. And I'm even seeing it now, but it creates a pressure space for really interesting art to come out. But May, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, who doesn't want to do art for a living?
Right.
As a creative, how many times have you heard, oh my gosh, you should sell your work?
Uh-huh. Oh my God.
Right. Uh-huh. And from the most well-meaning place, typically, right? But as somebody who spends, 40, 50, 60 hours on one project, what's the best alternative? Maybe patterns. Yes. And I think if you get copied once, like a legitimate copy, you will question your motivation. Mm-hmm. And where that comes from. I have gotten really weird comments before where people are like, this girl is so weird. She is not afraid to be cringe. And she is not afraid to make something that's not a beige sweater. And I was like,
oh, that's a compliment.
It's a compliment.
It's a weird one.
Like a reflection of where we're at.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I'm a weird girl. Okay.
Because I didn't create beige stuff. Yeah.
I appreciate it. I was like, oh.
That's honestly like such a good compliment though, because I don't like looking the same as everybody else. Yeah. I mean, listen, sometimes I'm going to go out in a black tee and jeans. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
But if I'm really trying to like show up and show out, I don't want to look the same as anybody else.
Right.
Have I made the cloud sweater? Yes. Would I do it again? Probably.
Maybe.
But I have a really great friend who is super creative and always makes these really standout designs. And I asked her where she gets her inspiration from. And she was like, yeah, normally I just look at like lampshades and stuff. And I think that's key to being a weird girl. Look at some weird stuff, get motivation and get inspiration from different places, different types of art, different styles of design. And I think you'll feel more satisfied with your own work too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh yeah. Something I think is really important to think about is if you do get copied, beyond that initial emotional response is, are you still proud of the work that you put out? Mm-hmm. Because having that monetary compensation for putting things out is a valid reason to feel proud of something. But I do think that there needs to be a little bit more than that, especially if you are building a community up around you, who are happy to obviously support you, and hopefully you're pouring back into them. But if you are not putting anything else of yourself into your work, how artistic is it really?
That's true.
Yeah. No longer honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's funny because I recently saw, like I don't sell patterns. I just make my own things. And the things I randomly on Pinterest, I saw someone selling a pattern of like, because I do appliques, right? And I don't really sell patterns. And I saw someone making a pattern of almost exact, I think it's a copy because the little decisions are very similar. And I feel like that's not really by chance. Anyway, and I just remember thinking like, I am actually more surprised by the fact that you feel comfortable selling something like this because it looks so bad. Like I was like, I wouldn't be able to put my name on something like this.
Right.
So like, yes, like Shay, like we were saying, are you still proud of your work? Yeah. And then I'm also like not proud of the duplicates or like not really proud of like the copies. So that actually makes me feel a lot better. I was like, oh, okay. It's just a copy. Like it's just a copy.
You tried to copy and it still looks like total ass.
Yeah.
You're the blueprint, Josh. So,
and it's not even like, I wouldn't even say it's anything crazy. And I think that's what it is. It's like what I've noticed too is, and again, I don't think this matters to people who just like, oh, I just want a shirt with a flower on it, right? But I think the people who do care are the ones I really do want to connect with. And those people do see the difference. Like they do see, oh, this feels different. Mm-hmm. Oh, this feels like someone spent time and thoughts and, and effort into it versus, oh, this is just like a copy. And I feel like the people that I do really appreciate and I really do want to connect to be in this community, they just naturally recognize that difference. And those are the people that I want to kind of keep around. Yeah. Anyway, I can't convince people who love Zara. No, if you shop at Zara, it's totally fine. Like this is a whole different conversation, but I can't convince them that why you should buy things from me. Mm-hmm. Right. Cause like that's going to be an impossible task for me to pursue. But I do appreciate the people who do recognize the beauty that I also see.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it just really goes to show that defining and creating your own unique style of designing and creating, it makes a difference. It genuinely does. Because when I look at designs, of course, if you have an idea of some fashion history, just like, certain silhouettes and like where they started and these sorts of things, obviously, there's nothing new under the sun technically. We can still say, well, that's a coat or that's a dress or that's a shirt or that's a pair of pants. Like at the end of the day, it's still something that you put on your body to wear, Mm-hmm. But like, I feel like, especially as designers, we can look at something someone has designed and we can say, oh, that's new. Or that's interesting. And not necessarily new, like no one has ever tried to do something in that same way, but maybe the way you're approaching it is different, like with your shirts, Josh, with the flower appliques. I've seen flower appliques on clothing before.
Everywhere. Yeah.
But I have not seen it the way you're doing it, and like,
thank you.
Yeah. And sometimes it does just take like that little piece of like, okay, hey, I want to do this particular style of this design or something. How do you bring your own piece to it? How do you make it look a little different? And I don't think there's anything wrong with consciously saying to yourself, okay, I want to do this particular kind of thing. Like I want to do applique shirts. Well, how can I do it differently? Like it really is that thing. It really, I feel like, I can't say simple because it's not. Designing is not
it is, right?
Yeah.
I think it's like there's nothing new about applique. There's nothing new about knitting a sweatshirt, right? But like it's those are the foundational techniques everyone has to learn first before getting playful with it. So like aunties and grandmas have been doing applique on quilts for hundreds of years. So it's like there's a competition on quilting. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's insane. But I feel like that technique exists and it's very, it's like a standard thing. But I think for me, it's more like, okay, with this technique, how do you do it in a way that feels you or fresh somehow?
And I think ultimately that's the key in designing in general. How do you bring your style, your flair, your uniqueness to it? Because no one is you. You are uniquely you, regardless of how many similarities we all have in the world. We're all very similar, but at the end of the day, no one is you specifically, because we all grow up in very unique circumstances and we meet different kinds of people and we interact with different kinds of things. So I think maybe that's ultimately the key. I don't know. That feels a little like, but
and people see it.
Yeah.
I do think people recognize. I really do think humans are incredibly perceptive, even if they don't have the language for it. Like they will see something that is beyond just like the surface. Sometimes, like, again, maybe they can't describe why it draws them in, but they can feel that it does draw them in. And I think that's like that the drawing, the thing that draws people in is like the unique elements that artists put into the pieces themselves. It's like a little piece of soul of yourself.
I think people want that. People definitely want that.
Yeah.
Shay, May, do you have any final wrapping up thoughts you want to share with us today?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think the most interesting part about art in general is to kind of access that backstory that people bring. I think art is always more interesting when you bring your own story into it, and everyone has a different background, whether it's cultural, where you grew up, your experiences personally. And I think by bringing that experience into your art, everything just becomes so much more beautiful and interesting, no matter how that shows up. Mm-hmm. And I love to see bits of an artist's personality in their work. I think that's why it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I also think that artists should give themselves grace, but also practice patience, because your first pieces they're not going to be like, they'll be masterpieces. They're a part of yourself, but you're only going to grow and get better. So give yourself time to like build that base. Don't just like throw it all away because it didn't strike lightning in a bottle the first go around.
That's great. Get mad in the group chat first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is why community is so important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Excellent points. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts today. This was a really insightful conversation for me, and I'm hoping that the audience agrees. If you do, let us know what your thoughts are on this. I think that this is a very nuanced conversation that could go on forever. There's tons of elements about it in general. We all know this, but I think it's important to have these kinds of conversations and hopefully make some sort of difference or change in how we interact with each other in our communities, because we're all just trying to do a thing, and like, let's just do it and be nice to each other. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks so much, Auri.
Thank you. Bye.